Okay, hello folks. This is, the video classes that I am recording to, round off important notions on this, final part of, this first section on Unit 1 that we are, dealing with now. So as we mentioned, syntactic features associated with the subject. Now it is, the time to tackle what Di Tullio explains in terms of the semantics of this notion. This is again from a presentation that I've taken from, this course that I took in 2013, and my professor was Andres Saab, and he is the brains behind the presentation that I'm showing you now. Okay, let me see where I was. So, just as subjects behave, in a special manner from a formal syntactic point of view, they also do so, in terms of their semantics and in terms of the relationship they maintain with the predicate in a simple sentence, predicate that functions as predicator. But the relationship that they maintain with the predicate, verbal predicate in particular, that functions as predicator, is special for it is as though the verbal predicate that functions as predicator has, a much closer connection to its complement. For example, thinking in terms of a transitive verb, the complement being the direct object of a transitive verb. And this is a much close-knit connection between verb and complement than the one that the verb maintains with its specifier. Specifier is the entity that comes to the left of the verb, in this case, the subject, right? So take a look at these, compound nouns, lavarropa, sacacorchos, paraguas, which show us somehow this close-knit connection that there exists between the verb and its internal complement, in this case, direct object. So close a connection that they have become lexicalized in compound, nouns. Something that has never taken place between the subject and the verb in use in these compound expressions, right? Then with this colloquial, with these locuciones verbales, la locución verbal se forma entre el verbo y el complemento interno. Nunca se forma, como en los sustantivos compuestos, entre el verbo y el sujeto. So, dar asco es una locución verbal, dar rabia, pegarse un susto, todas locuciones verbales that if you analyze the constitutive elements in them, you see that it is the verb plus its internal complement and never the verb and its subject. So we're going to make the distinction between an internal argument and an external argument. An internal argument is, the complements, meaning the argument or arguments that are selected for by the predicate. Don't worry about this sister, relationship, but selection is fine, that is selected for by, the verbal predicate in this case. And an external argument is the sentential subject, that may also be selected for by the verbal predicate, but has other, distinguishing features that, take the subject apart from the internal complement, the internal argument. Different from what takes place with internal arguments, external argument subjects, right, get their thematic role, their semantic role assigned not simply by the verb itself, but by the entire, syntactic predicate. This is something that we tackled, already in our live sessions. Take a look at this. We have Juan hizo la tarea. So it's not just hizo and its semantics that allow us to understand that Juan is an agent, but the entire verbal predicate plus its internal argument, their combination in terms of semantics, that allows us to determine that Juan is an agent here. Right? Here in hace calor, we have an impersonal sentence in that there's no agent, selected for, there's no argument whatsoever, but this is, elocución verbal already. When we want to describe, what the weather is like today and imagining it is hot, we don't just say hace, but we say hace calor. It's like an expression, a verbal expression. And in order for us to understand what type of semantic, subject is at stake, we can never speak of an agent because no entity is doing anything, but rather we can understand that at the level of, deep structure, there must be, a null pronoun, an expletive, but null. In Spanish, we have no explicit realization of it. That allows us to have these morphological features in the verb. Now, in Juan se hizo pelota, right? Alocución verbal that we were, discussing, pegarse un susto, hacerse pelota, similar sort. And in this case, we can understand that we are no longer speaking of an agent, for we understand the verb plus, its complement, in this case, as a way of interpreting the type of semantic role that this same entity Juan performs in C, different from the one that it performs in A. Okay? Okay, and here we have a list of possible semantic roles: the role of agent, the role of cause, the role of, experiencer, or, an intellectual experiencer, verbs such as love, right? A patient, a beneficiary, a goal, a source, right? Different, options for semantic roles that we have already been talking about. Let me see. That's it. For the time being, from this presentation, that's it. Yeah. Okay. Now, let me pause and we'll get back in a minute. Okay, now is the moment in which I'm interested in talking about the introductory section on this chapter, chapter 19 in the Tullius manual, which is Estructuras temáticamente marcadas. And this is, when she tackles information on, on the order of sentences in Spanish, and that we can extrapolate, when speaking about English as well. She begins the chapter by, let us go to the chapter, by, acknowledging that in chapter, for example, 6, in chapter La estructura de la oración simple, what she does is consider the structure of the sentence without having any consideration for the relationship that the sentence can establish with the linguistic co-text and the non-linguistic context in which it is used. It is just taking, the sentence as a unit of analysis in syntax. But in this chapter, chapter 19, what she does is precisely this, take a look at how a sentence can establish connections with its preceding, linguistic co-text and its surrounding non-linguistic context. And that these, relationships may be of different sorts, right? Syntactic, but also phonologic and pragmatic. So, for example, if there is an adjacency pair, so a pair that is involved in, asking and answering questions, if there is a question that is posed, as in, ¿estuviste con Eduardo últimamente? We have possibilities of saying, a Eduardo lo vi anoche en el teatro, so a Eduardo is, a constitutive element that is not the subject of the sentence, but rather it is a direct object, but it is occupying, taking up the position of subject, so it is occupying sentence initial position, for it is, allowing to recover information already mentioned in the sentence, in the question, and then, connecting it with this information already present in the question and then providing what is new, right? So beginning with the old information that is connected to the preceding co-text and then providing new information. Or this alternative, capital letters signaling, a repair and a contrast, because it's not Eduardo, but it's con Pedro, estuve últimamente, right? And this capital letters, indicating emphasis, prosodic feature. That's why phonologic nature is also mentioned here, because this is a question of prosody, being more emphatic, prosodically speaking, to signal the contrast and to signal the information that we want the listener to actually have to correct the misunderstanding. It's not Eduardo but Pedro that I was with lately. Okay, so we can have, al contextualizar una oración en un discurso, so when we use it, pragmatically in discourse, which is language put to use, contextually speaking, right? The speaker often connects it with the preceding discourse by means of two, types of relationships. Getting back as a starting point for the sentence that is upcoming, a constituent that already belongs to the universe of discourse, be it because it's been, mentioned before, or because it's, retrievable through associations with other elements, that have already been introduced, or establishing a contrast between a constituent that has already been mentioned with a constituent that it is mentioned here and that is put in focus. This, emphasized element, denies in an explicit or in an implicit manner the one that came before. So it's not con Eduardo that I've been lately, but rather con Pedro that I've been lately. So what is at stake here in this chapter is the functional structure of the sentence. So a sentence that is put to use in a specific, discourse and in a specific context of use. And this traditional division of a sentence into theme and reme, which pertains to the distribution of information in the sentence. The theme is a notion that is associated with, the connection of the sentence with the previous discourse, and it is usually located at the start of the sentence. Whereas the section that we associate with rhematic information, the reme, tends to be associated with the provision of new information and the location at the end of a sentence. Typically, right, since the theme is about previous information, known information, what we have is definite noun phrases, what we have is pronouns, or we have, null subjects. Null understood to be retrievable from the verbal inflections and not present canonically by means of a nominal at the beginning of a sentence. In rhematic position, we tend to have indefinite noun phrases because indefinite articles are used for first mention or non-specific ones, right? Because non-specific ones are usually associated with new information. If it's something specific, well, it is more of, an element with more chances of being considered old information. So this is the traditional division into theme and reme, in terms of the distribution of information in the sentence. So a sentence as a carrier not only of, noun phrases, verb phrases, adjective phrases, like constitutive elements that make up sentences and allow us to have grammatical sentences in English and Spanish, but more of the type of information that these phrases carry and, help, the sentence make up a larger unit of analysis, which is a discoursal unit of analysis. I will skip this for the time being because it won't be the topic for the time being of our discussion, but of importance here is to remember that the syntactic subject in a sentence is usually the typical theme, not only syntactically speaking, but also pragmatically and phonologically speaking. Why? Because it is usually in preverbal position, it is usually carrying information that is considered known or shared, that is to say, it is a theme. And in contrast, when a syntactic subject is located at the end in sentence final position, well, it is a rhematic subject. It is usually considered a reme, right? And such position of syntactic subjects, meaning a sentence final, a reme position, rhematic position, may be due to the type of verbal phrase, be it predicative or presentative in nature, the presence of an initial focus, the type of sentence, the structure of the noun phrase, and the principle of end weight. So when we have a subject in Spanish, in this case, that is not taking up initial position, we cannot just say that we have it somewhere else, particularly towards the end of the sentence, because Spanish is a much, freer language in terms of order of constituents. Well, usually there is a possibility for explaining why a subject has taken up sentence final position. And some of these reasons may be associated with, this list here. That the verb is predicative or presentative in nature, that there is a focus at the beginning of the sentence, therefore the subject has been relegated towards sentence final position, the type of sentence, the structure of the noun phrase, and the principle of n weight. So, a predicative sentence is a sentence whose syntactic subject and whose semantic subject coincide, in the sense that it is a syntactic subject located pre-verbally, and the semantic subject, that is to say the theta role, the semantic role associated with this syntactic subject, is that of agent, an agent. So a predicative sentence is an agentive sentence. And then comes the predicate as a syntactic constituent. There's usually correspondence between subject, theme, and in the predicate comes the reme. So this is the canonical transitive sentence in which we have an agent that does something, and this something is located, in rematic position. It is usually associated with new information. In a presentative sentence, the subject has low information value. And what we have in use is verbs of existence, of appearance, and movement. The syntactic subject usually represents the constituent with the highest information value. Sorry, my bad. I said that low information value should be associated with the verb. And then the syntactic subject usually comes in reme position, and it is the constituent that carries the most information. So this is associated with verbs, stated verbs such as sobrar, corresponder, urgir, bastar, plus verbs of emotion like gustar. So if I say to you, me sobra el tiempo is the syntactic subject that provides us with the most information, and therefore tends to be in sentence final position. Okay? Remember that these verbs, are the verbs that we have already tackled, in that we have me sobra el tiempo, me gusta gramática, la gramática del español. Vamos a hablar de la materia, me gusta gramática. So what we have is post-verbal subjects, as in el tiempo, as in gramática, that are explained. Of course, they are isolated sentences, and we would need a text to analyze, how they are connected to the preceding discourse and the following discourse. But what we have at stake is specific type of verbal form, right? An intransitive form that is an accusative and that selects for two arguments, but of importance is that there's no agency, there's no agent to speak of here, but we have more a theme realized as syntactic subject and an experiencer realized as indirect object. Okay? So this is what we have specified here. Let me see what comes next. Yeah. The reference to what Di Tullio explains in her book. This is page 111 in the original book that I have. In any case, it is a footnote in chapter 6, La estructura de la oración simple, in which she makes reference to the two types of intransitive verbs that there exist. The ones that are called propiamente dichos or inergativos, that I talked about before in my previous video classes as anergative in English. And there you have the syntactic subject coincides with the semantic subject. Therefore, what we're speaking of here is of the existence of an agent, right? Remember that semantic subject is to be equated with agent. And an accusative intransitive verbs in which the syntactic subject shares some of the features of the direct object, in particular its post-verbal position, right? Intransitive verbs of existence, of appearance, of movement. The subject, the syntactic subject, is usually, post-verbally located and represents the constituent with the highest information value. It's not the verb, caer, morir, nacer, llegar, faltar, sobrar, that entails the most information, but rather the syntactic subject located post-verbally. We want to know what is missing, what we have a lot of, what has arrived, what has been born, what has fallen, what has died. And verbs such as romperse, fundirse, congelarse, bajar, aumentar, mejorar, that are called ergativos. We will see why later in the year, but in any case, they are also intransitive and accusative. Why? The most important reason is to associate this notion of unaccusativity with lack of agentivity. So here we will make a comment and say no agency, or lack of agentivity.